Welcome to another episode of Black Belts and Boardrooms. I am your host, Amir Khawaja, alongside my co host, Renard Henry. And this is the show where we sit down with leaders who have earned their stripes through discipline, hard work, and a commitment to never quitting. And their stories will challenge you on how you lead, how you think, and who you're becoming. And Renard, I have a question for you before we get started.
What's that?
Our guest today is also like you, a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Do you think you can
Yeah.
take him on?
Man, you know what? I don't know. I don't know. It's a crapshoot with any black belt, I'm gonna be honest. So I cannot just say yes. I've rolled with people who are way smaller than me, older than me, and I mean it is like hell. So I say I respect everybody who worked hard to become a black belt because trust me, it is not easy to get one.
That's exactly how I answer that too. You just learn not to take anybody for granted, on any day. It could be that person's day.
That is a great
I
answer
love it.
from both of you, gentlemen. And our guest today is Mr. Dave Crull, who is not only a CFO in a large aviation company, he's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu, like I said, and he is probably somebody who you don't want to meet in the back alley. But not only that, what I appreciate about our guest today is that he's somebody who has shown discipline, determination, and wanting to give back through his nonprofit organization named Matt Mission. And he's also somebody who likes to make sure that other peoples are elevated. And I am really grateful today to you, Dave, that you took the time and be with us.
No, thank you guys. I love this. I watched this podcast get launched, I think like a year ago at this point. I mean, you guys have been out there for a bit. And one of the things that I liked in particular about it is you guys are hitting a community in LinkedIn, that you don't see as much. And so there's a lot of these types of messages that are out there, like in the Instagram's communities and throughout the gym. Like there's no shortage of jiu-jitsu content, but drawing the adjacencies between leadership and business and then just getting it out to a community that wouldn't ordinarily see it. I mean, you guys are making waves. And so I've had my eyes on this one for a while. I know Renard really well. And so it's an honor to be on, guys. I really appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, I think that, you've hit on a point that I really want to first start with, and that is how that parallel between combat sports, if we can call it that for a second. I know there's an actual application of martial arts, but putting that aside for a second, just the real discipline behind the sport itself. And you're somebody who served in the Marine Corps, and thank you for your service as well. But
Oh,
then you're
thank you.
also this big leader in corporate America, right? And just to kick us off, help us get started. How do you see those parallels? Because I think that's an important leadership lesson lens that you can bring to us. What is that service installed in you, and how does that show up in your career that you do today?
I mean, it's an interesting question. And, I probably would answer that different in different phases. But I'm actually going to plagiarize something that a really young guy in our company today gave me. And he said, we need a third place to be. And so we have work, right? And work will consume you. And like the higher up you go, the more wet they'll hang you up when it's all said and done. Then you've got your family, which hopefully is, up there on the priority list. But you need that third place. And some people have church, some people have a variety of different activities. And for me, like 20 years ago, jiu-jitsu just stuck. And it's hard. It's something that takes a lot of patience and energy, and the progress is sometimes nothing for months on end. Like we were talking a little bit, kind of in the warm up here about how punishing it could be. And Renard's right. Like on any given day, I mean, like I might have just gotten off of a red eye flight and I got to show up and somebody's on their A game, And so like it challenges you in different ways. And I can think of so many instances where I walked in with the weight of the world on my shoulders and problems that I just couldn't see through to the other side. I trained, I'm with my friends, I'm sweating, all that endorphins flowing. And I walked out and magically the pathways appear. And that sounds sort of hocus pocus and a little bit of like voodoo, but it's true. And it's happened so many different times. And so one of the cool things about jujitsu is that, and it might be the same in other martial arts as well. I'm not 100% sure, but there is definitely a direct correlation between longevity on the mats and success in whatever profession you've got, whether that's as an executive or whether it's as some sort of professional services person or whatever. Like you'd be shocked the number of really, really successful people in other areas of life that are out there training on the mats. And so, yeah, success leaves clues, I guess, right?
It sure does. And you bring some of that as well in the work that you do with Matt Mission. Isn't that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Matt Mission for a sec. So thanks for bringing that up. Matt Mission is a nonprofit that was founded by a guy named Sam Snow. And so Sam is a jujitsu entrepreneur in the DFW area. He's been out here for years. I'm sure Renard's seen him floating around or has rolled with him at an open mat or whatnot. And he has a for-profit entity as well called Roll the World, and he wanted to do something to give back. And so Matt Mission essentially will go into underprivileged communities and try to extract some of the leadership attributes and character building attributes that some people just can't afford to participate in, and bring it to those communities, particularly to the youth in those communities. And so to see role models, to see people that are willing to put their time in with you, that's what the Matt Mission is all about. Um, what is particularly unique about the Matt Mission is that we, of course, do one-on-one sponsoring so kids can come into an academy that couldn't afford. Their parents might be going through financial hardship or whatnot. And that's one way that we support the community. But what I think is particularly impactful is we do these community projects. And so, for example, one of the community projects that we did was out in East Fort Worth, in a particularly bad area, with kids that didn't have anything to do. And so one of our board members went out there and he set up a community project at a church that had a community center that was in there. Where Matt Mission comes into that is we fund it. So we're able to provide, if you need mats, we can provide mats. If you need curriculum, we can provide curriculum. And what we would like to do after that is then package that up, and then find somebody that's willing to sponsor that so that we could get it sponsored, keep it financially solvent, keep it active, and then move on and do it again. That way, we're not just helping one person, we're helping 10 or 20 or 30 or whatever the case might be. And it's a model that we could package up, not just in the DFW area, but throughout the world as well. And so if you're interested in learning more about Matt Mission, it's themattmission.com. It talks all about us. You could follow us on social media. But no, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love about Matt Mission and the idea is that, you truly, as you said, package it up. And I think this is a great example of how you can be part of a community helping young people. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be like all the other programs we've seen before. I know martial arts might not be the first thing people think about, but I think the important, and I'll speak personally, and I know Renard probably has a point of view too, the discipline, the perseverance, the skills using your hand and feet and your whole body,
Oh, yeah.
staying healthy, all of
Yeah.
those things give you a complete human being. And that's what I appreciate about martial arts is that it gives you that human skills, which we
Mhm.
carry with us day in, and it's a transferable skill, which is something that's very useful for young people today or anytime
Ab
for that matter.
Absolutely. It helps kids learn to adapt as well. I mean, I've seen kids that I've taught that have come in that have never actually had anybody be aggressive towards them, and
Mhm.
so like they get pushed and they have to learn that, they cry a little bit. And then in a couple weeks, you see them rolling around. I wouldn't say roughhousing, but I mean, like those are actual character building attributes that are going to last for the rest of their life. The other thing that's really unique about well, let me say this about the Mad Mission. The hardest part of growing it is not the funding. Because, like I said before, there are plenty of successful people that are in the community that want good places to deploy their capital into. What they want to know is that it's going to something that's worthy and that's worthwhile. And so we could convince them of that. The hard part is finding somebody that has the time and the energy to go out there and stand one of these up. So if you're a purple belt, like Renard, I'm sure you've seen this as well. There are purple belts that are out there that teach better than black belts. So it isn't about being a brown belt or a black belt or whatnot. It's about about actually being willing to put your time and energy into investing into these kids and then let Matt Mission go do the rest. We'll get you funded. We'll get you anything you need on the jiu-jitsu side, whether that's equipment, curriculum, time. Sam and I will both come out and do seminars, teach classes, whatever the case may be. The hardest part is finding somebody that's willing to actually be the tip of the spear on these things. So if anybody's out there and wants to talk about it, like I said, come find me because I've got big ears for this stuff.
Well, Dave, I'm going to ask you to clarify because everybody knows what a black belt means. It's usually the top of the spear or tip of the spear. What is a blue belt in jiu-jitsu?
Man, a blue belt in jiu-jitsu is somebody that probably just spent the last 2 years of their life just getting smashed. That's what it is. They have gotten through that first gauntlet of pain. They've hit the first hurdle, and to get a blue belt in jiu-jitsu is noteworthy. A lot of people say, "Hey, just to start jiu-jitsu is noteworthy," because it is punishing. Like there really is no faking it. You could do some of the lighter stuff for a while, but eventually to be fully immersive in it, you're going to go live. And, different places have different rules about it. But by the time you're a blue belt, you should be able to confidently defend yourself against an untrained opponent in real life, regardless of weight, size, age, gender differences that you might have. So while they are dangerous and trained, they are at the very beginning of their journey. They're probably a tenth of the way towards, some of the more recognizable belts, like black belt, for example. So that's it. There's not a lot of belts in jiu-jitsu. There's a couple. You get a couple chances to get recognized. So I guess you got to learn quickly. Like this isn't going to be something where you're going to get a lot of belly rubs. You're going to have to learn really quickly to to find other things to like other than the participation awards.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all the different martial arts out there because each and every one of them are
Yeah.
designed for a specific community of people.
Hmm.
Jiu-jitsu is a great martial arts system for anybody who's interested in learning about it. I'm more of the striking arts. I just don't do the
It's
sweating and
dangerous.
everybody's such close. Yeah, that's not me. That's not for me.
Yeah.
I give
Yeah.
me all the striking arts with weapons all day long. I'll be, a happy camper. But something that I've picked up from just talking to you right now, and I want to see if we can frame this for our listeners, is that you've gone from multiple disciplines to now where you are in aircraft. I mean, I'm thinking
Hmm.
about your experience as working on airplanes, for example, to now you're doing
Right.
financing. That's not a
Hmm.
straight path, if you will. Aircraft, financing, and then was there a mentor? Is there any coaching in there somewhere?
You know what it was? It was a massive exogenous event. It was 9/11. And when I got out of the military, I went and got my FAA licenses. The airframe and power plant license is what's required to work on commercial aircraft. And I thought that would be sort of at least life's first profession for me. And I worked at Delta Airlines here in the Dallas area, loved it. Was sort of knife fighting my way through college, all that kind of stuff. And then after September 11th, if you remember, I mean, like just the economy went through a massive recession, but the airline industry in particular, there were a lot of really recognizable airlines that we would have grown up with and remember those tales like TWA, Pan Am, Continental. I mean, those types that would have flown into our hometowns that don't exist anymore. That all happened in a really short period of time. And so I suddenly found myself on the outside of an environment that I thought was a meritocracy. And it was an introduction into the way that the civilian workforce operated. In the Marine Corps, it wasn't a perfect system, but hustle creates luck. And if you're in there and you are willing to go out there and sling knees and elbows, as the striker might say, then you could get a lot done. When the reductions in force started happening at this big airline institution, and I realized that I couldn't work my way out of that, and people that were, sort of lethargic and lazy, and just because they had a hire date different than mine, were going to stick around through this. Like I saw it as a massive corporate betrayal, and I made it an effort of mine. Like this is the system, this is the game. Then I'm going to make sure that I know the rules and I play the game. And I made a decision at that time, like let me give it a shot at finance. an area that does seem like it would be a little bit more meritocracy based and based on merit, essentially. And it was a tough decision at the time because I was a young guy. I was in my 20s. I had my first son already. And I remember my wife and I talking like I was going to have to take a pretty significant step back to start off as an entry level financial analyst. But that was a decision that we made, and so, and then after that, it was just putting yourself in the right place at the right time. And I definitely had mentors and people that brought me up and people that were willing to put me into the flames and protect me from getting burned along the way. And I mean, when I go back and look at that 29 and 34 and 37 and 42-year-old leader that was just coming up the ranks. I mean, like, it was sometimes borderline irresponsible to put me into some of those positions, but that's the way careers work, and so that's a part of my story is just being in that, third shift turban grease scrubbing environment that I thought was, just the best that it possibly could be. And then some massive change of events, ended up sending me on a different peripheral and there was a different plan. And so, and I've also learned through the last 24 months really that like, I'm still a young guy. I'm 48 years old. Who knows what's next? Just because I'm doing this finance thing right now doesn't mean that that's what's meant for me over the next decade. And I'm working on things to, kind of open my eyes and put myself around people that do different things. And, it's just part of the journey, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like what martial arts brings: continuous learning, continuous improvement. Like you said, just because you're 48, your life isn't over. I feel the
Yeah.
same way. I turned 47 this year. My life is not even close to being over yet. There's still so
Right.
much left to do. So I'm kind of curious. Of course, I'm going to go back to the black belt side of our podcast, and
Mm.
as we talked about earlier, you are a black belt. I want to go back to Dave. I'm thinking about doing jujitsu. Who was this guy before? Who was the white belt version of you, and why did you decide to train jujitsu?
So I was always into martial arts. I did Okinawan karate when I was in Okinawa. I did Taekwondo as a kid, and so it was just always something that I was enamored with. And I kind of came up in that generation that I guess you could call like the Yellow Pages generation. Like you couldn't Google this stuff, and so I remember flipping through the martial arts section of the Yellow Pages when I was 8 years old, like begging my mom and dad to let me go do this thing, this like mystical, art of the Orient. It was just a different world. But the UFC was up and coming. And then when I went into the Marine Corps, the elements of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu were incorporated into the combatives programs, and they were really open about it. Like they had completely overhauled it in the late '90s and early 2000s. And I remember sitting in a classroom and we were literally putting VHS tapes in and watching some of the early UFC fights before they became so rules based and talking about the effectiveness of some of the moves and specifically talking about things like Hoist Gracie, who was just a pioneer in all this. And, um, and so as I exited and as I started to come into my own professionally, I realized that there was an element, that third place that I mentioned earlier. Although I couldn't put a definition around it at the time, I realized that, I was getting a little bit older. I was in my 20s still, but I wasn't 22. I wasn't doing daily PT with my camaraderie or my comrades. I mean, and I needed something to keep me honest. And so I went right back to what I kind of fell in love with when I was in the military and founded jiu-jitsu school. I was in South Florida at the time, and there's a guy by the name of Pablo Popovich that's kind of a legend in our sport, big ADCC competitor. I mean, he had a school down there, and it was one of the few. And he has since put out kind of the bedrock for schools that are down there. But I got a place, rented a house near his school, and that became the entry to it, and never looked back. So everywhere I've been, there's always been a place that like the first thing I'm doing is like, well, where's the jujitsu at? That informs hotel choices, that informs rental searches and all that good stuff. It's crazy how it works. I don't know what's wrong with us. This is it's what does this do to us?
Yeah. I agree with that. Hoist UFC was the reason I started as well. And Amir, I'll tell you a story, and it's around the UFC and it's around Hoist. Hoist is the reason jujitsu became popular in the US because no one ever heard of it at first. Only selected people got to train. Carlos Machado is one of the big people. If you're talking about in Dallas, Carlos is almost the person who started jujitsu in Dallas, and
Yeah,
he
legend.
legend. So
Yeah.
it started that way, and you got the other areas. You go to California, you got these different legends, etc. But it was the UFC that really brought jujitsu to light, and people was like, "Man, how's this small guy just beating all these bigger guys?" No one could understand it. These guys were different martial arts, etc. So jujitsu became it, and for me, it was UFC. I got tapped 3 times back to back by some guy who was like 150 pounds, and I said, "I
Yeah.
wanna keep coming back."
Yeah.
I didn't quit, I wanted to keep coming back after that, and jujitsu just it transforms you, man.
It
It's
really
something I
does.
can't even explain sometimes of how much jujitsu is so important in my life. I could tell this, and me and Dave offline have talked about jujitsu before, and Amir, I can talk about jujitsu all day, so I'm gonna stop doing that right now before we get too deep in, to jujitsu. But you being an executive, and we of course we know how much martial arts and leadership ties together. I want to know what made you decide to have an executive coach. We're all in the same cohort in vertical
Yeah.
motion. What was that point you got to the point in your career? Because you were already established, you're already doing these great things. What made you say, "Hey, I need an executive coach"?
I've had coaches for in various parts of my career. And first of all, I don't know many good leaders that don't have some form of coaching happening in the background, whether it's indirectly or directly. And it might not be the type of coaching that we've got or that we do, but you do need somebody that's independent, that you could trust, that you could bounce ideas back and forth with, that you could feel safe to speak about, and that could call you on your own problems. Um, One of the issues that happens, especially in big organizations, is you do end up with a lot of groupthink. And like, I like going to cohorts like we've got, right? Where I see you guys from different industries, different walks of life, different ways of thinking. And coaching does that, it gives you a space, it creates a sandbox for you to play in. And sometimes it's just hearing your own ideas out loud. A lot of times you already know the answer, but you just don't have anybody to kind of guide you down that path. Uh, and I entered into a phase of my current phase of life where I realized I was facing challenges that I didn't want to face alone. There were significant professional challenges coupled with personal elements that went along with that, including a lot of travel and things like that. And I'm like I just need somebody that I can kind of depend on, I guess, for lack of a better term. And Renard, you would know this is how you and I are connected, and Amir as well through Tom Cox. The way I found Tom is from a friend of mine. And I watched a transformation from a guy by the name of Brett Buski. I don't think he would mind me saying that. And I've known him off and on in different types of capacities through the years, but he had literally been transformed. And I'm like, "Who are you working with, man? I need this guy's number." And that's how we connected. And the things that we've done since then, I mean, I don't think I would have, they weren't in the range of possible outcomes or the reasonable realm of planning. Um, but I don't think I'll ever have a phase in my life going forward where I don't have somebody like that I can speak with. Um, you know, the other thing I think is important when it comes to coaching is like different seasons call for different coaches. And the same reason that you walk into a relationship with a coach to get different perspectives and to have somebody to kind of create some space and some margin for you to, think in. Different people do it different ways, and different challenges need different tool belts. So I'm always out there kind of thinking of what's next, and that's how I came about it.
No, that I agree with that. I got to the point, and I think Amir's the same way. I got to the point where I was moving in my career, but it was this unknown space. I couldn't put
Yeah.
my hand on it. I couldn't speak about it. And for me, Tom popped in my Instagram feed. I joke with my wife. I said I was talking about, man, I'm having these, and all of a sudden Tom pops up. So for me,
Mm.
it was one of the best decisions because it transformed me, and it got me into the uncomfortable space where I didn't know I needed to get to in order to keep moving in my career, and this podcast is one of the reasons it happened, because of time
Mhm.
in that group, etcetera. So, no, I definitely understand, like I said, it happens for different seasons, like you said, it definitely makes sense. So now you're an executive coach.
Mhm.
So
That's right.
you got a executive coach, and now you are giving back by being an executive coach. I would
Yeah.
love your take on how do you see that as now being a person who's coaching others?
Man, well, that whole journey, first of all, like, one of the things that having a coach helped me with is just thinking through. Some of it just thinking through and talking through, and then some of it creating a little bit of an infrastructure and a framework to think through things like your life's purpose. What are you here to do? Like, it's not uncommon for people. Well, I would say it is uncommon for somebody to have a perfect trajectory in their career where they like every single incremental change that happens and it lines up perfectly with every single element of their life. Like, that's just not that common of a situation. And if somebody finds themselves there, awesome, unicorn. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't change a thing, you know? Um, so as I started thinking through, like, where does time disappear with me? Like, where do I feel like I'm in a total flow? Where do I feel like I could spend the whole week doing exactly this and not make a single dime? Like, it was things where I was mentoring people, whether that was inside my organization or outside my organization when I was teaching jujitsu. So like there was an element of instruction and interaction, especially like individually. And there's a niche inside there as well, but like just generally. Um, and and that's when I decided, like, you know what, coaching needs to be a part of what I do. It doesn't need to be my primary source of income. Maybe it will be someday, but it doesn't need to be right now. But it is a part of what makes me tick. And I need to find ways to bracket time and ring fence time so I can do this because it fills my battery up. Inevitably, in any profession you have elements that, as you know, Renard, like you have to adapt through. And so, like, the coaching element helps justify some of that for me. Um, and I'll tell you, I mean, working with the clients that I've got, I mean, it's one of the most rewarding things that I do. And it's the same type of reward that I get when somebody that works for me inside one of the organizations does well. And I can't do enough of it. you know, I imagine anybody that's in a role like that kind of feels that way. Like, it's hard not to become addicted to watching other people's success become apparent to them from them.
Yeah. I would say it has a lot of parallels, like you say, with martial arts. You become a brown belt, you become a black belt, you start teaching.
Mm,
You want others to get better. You become a black belt, and now you want to see everybody who's lower belts get to the same level with you, so they can be black belt as well. Same thing
so
when it comes
true.
to executive coaching is, hey, I want to see you grow as well. I want to see you win just as much as I've won as well. So it's so many similarities to it, and I would say the same thing when we switched to executive coaches. It was I was nervous at first. I was like, this is another uncomfortable space. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But now looking at the clients I have as well and just seeing, hey, they're making progress. I'm seeing them get better, etc. They're getting into these uncomfortable areas. It makes you want to do more as well. Amir, I would love your take on just having an executive coach as well, and how's it impact you?
Tremendously. So so Tom was not my first executive coach. I've had other coaches, and I resonate with what you just now said, Dave, that you need to coach for a different season. And I've had different seasons where different coaches have come in and mentors have come in and helped. Formally, I think Tom was the kind of coach I needed in the season that I was in. Tom not only brought that perspective of a senior leader with experience, he also brought a perspective of here's a set of skills you need to go and learn. And I think I needed that structure from somebody like Tom to give that to me, and that was the season that I was in. Now I'm in a different season, not that I don't need coaching, I still do, but I think it's changing what I'm needing right now. To your point, you need that voice, that sandbox. I think that's, again, another critical avenue. No different from a dojo. You're in the gym, you're training with folks. White belts are dangerous. We know this firsthand.
Yeah. We just talked about
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I very much have, a soft spot for coaching, and I appreciate that I'm right now in the presence of two executive coaches. Something I've been wanting to chase for a while, but just haven't been able to ring fence the time. But to your question, Renard, I think everybody should be with a coach. You don't have to be an executive to have an executive coach, but just having that coach. Why would you train in a sport if you don't have a coach for that sport? Working is the same way. And business, unfortunately, works the opposite of sport. In sport, 90% of the time you're practicing and training, and 10% of the time you're competing. In business, it's like 99% of the time you're you're doing the work,
I
you're
know.
competing, but 1% of the time, maybe you're training.
I know, it's so true. It's so
Yeah.
true. I've heard that analogy with law enforcement a lot as well, where, like you said, I mean, when you're training for a sport, like that's the match itself. I mean, for jujitsu, it might be 5 minutes,
Mm.
and if you lose, that's it, and it took a year, right? Yeah. But then in business or in other professions, it's just the complete opposite. So to be able to invest in yourself and then have somebody that's, independently looking out for your interest, and in a case of coaching, based on what you say, yeah, I think it's invaluable. I think it's invaluable. One of the biggest challenges, I mean, and Renard, you could give your perspective on this too, and I think we probably share this, is that like coming from an environment where, the lens of coaching might be more from a corporate angle, the tendency is to be more instructive and more
Mhm.
prescriptive, and to create a sandbox for somebody. That's not what we do in the corporate world. People come in, sometimes we do, but a lot of times people come in and are like, hey, what do you think about this? And you tell them what you think so that the conversation ends and they can go do it. Whereas on the coaching side of it, like it isn't necessarily the outcome that I want that matters. It isn't the outcome that I want that matters. It's me creating that space so that people can tell me from their voice what it is that they want. And then I can help them explore, and that's what I needed for sure. And sometimes, like, and I've told Renard this story before, but like sometimes what stuck to me the most was the silence and the space that Tom created for me. Like, he literally told me once, like, I am not going to say this for you. Like I know what you want to say, but it needs to be your voice. Like that's how paralyzing it could be sometimes, because what you really want to do might not be even podcasting. Like I'll look back, I remember being so self-conscious of my own podcast. Like I'm like, what will people say about this? What will people say about me? And it's so funny. Like this is a little bit exposing, but I remember when I first made the decision, I'm like, I'm going to make this a part of my professional life. I'm going to put it on LinkedIn, like this is going to be a part of my like profile. And all of a sudden it got out. And this was a couple companies ago, and that Dave does this podcast. And so what do people do? They tease you. And I remember our boardroom was like through this little labyrinth of hallways. And I remember walking down there one day for an unrelated reason. And I heard my voice on the speaker. And I'm like, those guys are making fun of me. And I went in there and I let them kind of get all the shame out of their voice and whatnot. And it was no big deal after that, And so sometimes, and it was actually relieving, it was like a little bit of teasing and stuff, which, hey, it's something new. Um, gave me space for 4 years. It's been 4 years, and so like think about what would have happened if I didn't do that. And so like that's what coaching has provided for me. It's let me hear my own voice and get out of my own head and take some of those like filters that you just subconsciously put on yourself because, hey, this is what other people around me are doing. I mean, think how much time you spend, like if you're in a traditional work environment in a traditional company like Toyota or Mitsubishi or wherever it is. I'm just making up names here that we're familiar with, but like, man, that's your life. I mean, that's where you're at most of the time. And so, to think that you're not influenced by that in ways that you don't realize, you are. And so getting some independence, um, can't go wrong. Can't go wrong.
I agree. I agree.
So Dave, I'm going to ask you because you work in an industry where very small errors could escalate very very quickly. And I'm thinking about the issue with the door, and I forget the airline. Like you
Yeah.
could probably
Yeah.
tell me which airline it was, but I'm forgetting the name
Yeah.
right now. A little
Hmm.
door thing with a screw and whatever have you is what it turned out to be, but it costs hundreds of millions of dollars. Is there a ritual that you follow to keep yourself from going out of control, berserk, or letting the frustrations get to you to just kind of keep you centered? Because I'm sure you have a very frustrating day from time to time. Is there a ritual?
Um, no, I mean, I have mantras if you wanted to know a
Mm,
ritual, and there are things that I will, some positive self-talk and stuff like that that I'll do. But those are more ritualistic and those are a part of routines that I have. What you're describing is a part of something that every industry has. I mean, there's noise everywhere, things that will absolutely drive you insane. Noise within the organization, noise within your role, noise within your group, noise within the budget, the objectives that you've got, goals, whatever those might be. And so, like for me, um, finding a grounding place of what success looks like and giving my team a grounding place of what success looks like has always been something that I focused on, and so that might be having a regimented leadership team meeting where we create some space so that you're not so focused on just the day to day anymore. We could kind of have a big idea zone, have a danger free zone where you could kind of let loose a little bit, or one of the things that I've tried recently that has been kind of fun has been challenging people with these sort of make believe, sort of embellished scenarios, and letting them reverse engineer the pathways that would have created that into a possibility, you know, things like that, giving people the space in order to, be a little bit different, making sure what success is really clear, both for myself and for the people around me. You worry less about the noise and the externalities around you, right? Because they will drive you crazy. What you described is a massive event. I mean, like that is a symptom of something that was going on and going wrong for a long time. And I will say has largely been resolved, at least publicly. And, because before that there were airplanes that went down and as well. And so, yeah, that's making finding a way and a place to keep the noise to a minimum, and understanding what things should look like when things inevitably start ebbing and flowing around it. You need that safe place, right? You need a grounding place and a way to get back to, neutral, just like jujitsu. Like we all have our favorite safe spot that we go to. Like I was telling a story, leading up to this about this ambitious young, professional football player that I was rolling with last week. And believe me, like whether he knew it or not, I was going to some safe places, so that I could watch the clock tick a little bit quicker.
That's amazing. So, can I? You don't have to agree to the question, but I just want to pick on what you just now said. I think this is a
Sure.
good leadership lesson for us to learn and the listeners to hear from you. You said create a safe space where you have idea zone. Can you walk
Mm,
us through what one of these sessions would look like? Maybe we can adopt some of this in our own work.
sure. Um, I mean, using a really practical example, like let's say the three of us were out at IHOP having coffee and just talking about what's next. And I said, Amir, here's a scenario for you to think about. Black Belts and Boardrooms has just made top 10 on Spotify. Like it has now become a major source of income. You have a guest list that's backdated 50 weeks. And what needs to happen in order for that to be true? What would have to be the case in order for that to be true? Like that's sort of a scenario that may or may not be appealing to you guys, but like for somebody that says they want to grow, then that would be one that I might lay out. One that I like, a practical one that I've used for somebody that works in my group, is that you've been honored as the Woman of the Year for system usage. And I won't say the system's name, because we've just implemented a new system and it's got challenges and it's got things that are, there's hiccups along the way. Like, walk me through, like, what did it take in order to become the thought leader for this from something that's brand new? You know, like, oh, wow, it just puts you in mentally in a different space. Like, well, that couldn't happen because this person did this. Oh, okay, cool. So now we've started to find something that's maybe the root cause, and it's not that simple and it's not always that revealing. And the other thing is you have to be willing for it to crash and burn. Like I need to be willing for those sessions to be a complete, like non-productive time. Like we might not get anything out of it. And so that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for maybe the one thing that might have a 10 or a 20 or a 100x return that I'm not going to get in email, and I'm not going to get in a 30 minutes Teams call, and I'm not going to get in just the business as usual environment. That's what those things would normally look like to me. And I like that as well. I like to be challenged and pushed back into a corner a little bit, because, like, hey, look, you go to the safe space for yourself too. You're like we all default to what's comfortable for us, and to have somebody kind of like get you out of that zone, which is so addicting. Comfort is just something that like just can't get enough of. I like. I might not like it in the moment, but I like the result.
I love it. One of the things we learn in martial arts is taking that space away so you have very high levels of constraints. How do you get out of that? Jiu-jitsu
Mm.
is probably much better at this than taekwondo or any of the other martial arts, which are striking arts. But if you take away that space, how do you function? And I love the example, and thank you for sharing that example and teaching us on how to do that.
No, my pleasure. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick a little bit more on the jujitsu piece, and I'm sure Renard is gonna get a kick out of this. We're talking about martial arts here, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, one of the things we talk about, at least in the striking arts, in Taekwondo or any other martial arts that I've been a part of, is longevity, and it's the
Mm.
same thing in a career, right? We know that you'll have long 30, 40, 50-year careers. What is your perspective on longevity? And I'll start with the martial arts piece, right? Because at some point in jiu-jitsu, you're not going to be rolling around with the 27, 28-year-old. You're going to be more like, hey, maybe I'm going to spend maybe an extra 3 more minutes in my safe space.
Yeah.
Talk to us about longevity in your point of view, starting with the martial arts piece.
It is There's two aspects that I think of when I think of longevity. Number one is mental longevity. And there is an analogy, and Renard, this is probably going to resonate with you in a big way, of that long drive home on a
Mm.
Tuesday night after class when things didn't go your way. And maybe it was Tuesday night, maybe it was Wednesday night, maybe it was Thursday night, all strung together. Maybe it was the first quarter all strung together. The number one indicator of whether or not somebody is going to be able to make it long term is to whether or not they can get through that drive home and subordinate their ego, come back and realize that they're learning, and come back. I mean, like, that is the number one thing. And believe it or not, there are so many people that can't. And I have seen people that are athletically gifted, that are statistically unusual in terms of the skills that they've got, in terms of their conditioning and whatnot. And they do really well in the early ranks, especially guys that wrestled in college or something like that. I mean, you come in with a major advantage in terms of like grappling skills and give me fits. Um, but eventually that stuff catches up, and that's not jujitsu. And like all of a sudden, like what success was to you was just, can I win or lose? Not all of the other attributes, the community, the character building, the friendships, those types of things, giving back, like all of that type of stuff. That has to be a part of your jujitsu in order for you to make it long term. That's the mental side. The physical side, Renard and I just kind of set our ages, like we're upper 40s at this point. Like the amount of healing mechanisms that I've got around. I mean, if you guys can see the background here, I mean, whether it's cold tub sauning, rest, uh, and even just like a little bit of a dose of reality, those are all part of longevity. Like, I cannot train today like I trained when I was 30 or when I was 40. So I've had to learn how to adjust my training, adjust my mindset, and one of the things that I've adopted, and it wasn't as a black belt. I mean, this was something that I kind of had to figure out coming up, was that I want to be the type of practitioner that I can train no matter what. Like, it might not be an A round, it might not be a win, it might not be, and the success might be not get submitted. The success might not be get submitted until 2 or 3 minutes. Like, it's just, I can microdose what that needs to mean so that I can always show up. So unless I'm just severely injured and training would potentially cause me to regress or go backwards, then, I always want to be on the mats, and I want to be on the mats until I literally cannot get out of my own bed. And, and like, you just have to be a little bit different. So I got two college wrestler boys, and like, I've told them 100 times, like, if I get you on the ground, you aren't getting up, because they got bigger and energy, and they're happy to go dose out pain, and the consequences for them are so much less severe than they are for me. You tweak a hip flexor on this guy, and man, that might be 6 months. So anyway, those are kind of the tricks of the trade for me. But I will say, I think the mental piece of it is way more than the physical, because injuries heal, but the ego, my gosh, man, that's so fragile sometimes. I'm guilty of it. And if you can't get over that, then man, it's going to be a short road. It's going to end.
Yeah. Speaking of age, we're all in good company here. I'll be
Good.
pushing 50 next year.
Oh,
So
milestone.
I know exactly. Well, anyways. Um, but I'm drawing parallels here, right? So longevity in a career is the same way. It's that mental shift, and I want to, bring that to the forefront. I think that a big part of the mental, not just in martial arts, but also in the corporate, and something that maybe your perspective will enlighten us a little bit here is, how do you think about that mental maintenance? Because the physical maintenance is very different from the mental maintenance. What advice would you give to the 20-year-old versus the 30-year-old versus the 40-year-old? I know Renard and I, we share many things in common. Maybe it's because our age is very similar. I don't know. Not to, make you sound old, Renard, but
I still look young. I'm good.
Like you
I'm
said,
good.
we're all good company.
we're
Yeah.
all in good company. But talk to me as a leader. How would you talk about mental maintenance or mindset maintenance? Is at least that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
Just like physical maintenance.
It's a really good question. And I mean, I think it's something that I need to think about more and more. And what that tells me is that the way that you view that when you're 30 is probably different than it is when you're 40. Like, there are elements of your job and my job and Renard's job, and that, I mean, we'll probably just like suck the marrow out of your soul and hang you up wet, if you let it. And that's one thing when you're early on in your career. And I would encourage people that are early on, like, you're on your arc. Like, it's okay to hustle. Don't let people tell you that, like, that's not a good thing, or that's something that is, going to be I don't know, somehow shaming or whatnot. Like, I just don't subscribe to that. Like, everybody has a right to their own opinion, but that I couldn't have gotten to where I was getting to if I wasn't willing to sacrifice. um, that changes as you get older. That changes as you get more senior. And like, when we talk about leadership in general, I've always taught people about certain mindset attributes that leaders have. People talk about developing themselves as a leader. Like, there are attributes that you could have, right? There's like judgment, decisiveness, things like that are good leaders. But then there's also mindset. And there's a couple different pillars that I normally talk about. One of those pillars is adaptability, the ability to be adaptable. And in order to be adaptable, you need to feed your mind. You need to be curious. You need to be curious when you're talking to people. And I mean, like, not just, hey, I'm curious. No, actively curious. And then read. Like, if you consume information on a phone, fine. If it's a Kindle, fine. But read books. Like, I don't like something other than 30-second clips. Read books again and again. I have a book that I've been recommending to people recently. I read it 10 times, like, as opposed to just kind of like consuming it, putting it on the shelf and moving on, because I want to learn the new information. And so like, that's probably going to be, that's that. I wasn't always that disciplined. I didn't always read as much as I do right now, but like, I don't know, it feels like there's a correlation with the trajectory of my career, where I'm at in my career, what kind of information I'm required to give to people. Um, and so, like, that's it. You need, being adaptable is a leader's mindset. So it is a pillar of a leader's mindset. And to be adaptable, you need to feed yourself with information, and that needs to come from different sources.
I love it.
I agree. I'm gonna go back a little bit because when we're talking about the whole jujitsu mindset, et cetera, I'm just gonna co-sign that and agree with that 100%. It will put you in a lot of uncomfortable positions. Either you're gonna forge ahead or it's gonna break you. It's gonna be
Yeah,
one of the 2.
yeah,
And that's what I found in jujitsu far as mental capacity. Either I was going to continue to push forward or I was gonna quit. There were many times I wanted to quit. I'll
yeah.
be honest. Many times through my
Same.
time, I was like, "I don't know if I can keep doing this." I was getting older, etcetera. But you understand that when you put yourself in an uncomfortable position, you find out there's more. Like, and I know Dave and Amir, you probably can test when there's only a minute and something left in a round and you are dead tired, you be like, I got 1 more minute. I gotta push
Yeah,
through. I gotta make this minute. I got to push through.
yeah,
And it just changes that mindset when it comes to leadership as well. It's like, okay, I might not have a good week. I might have a bad month, but
mhm,
it's gonna get better if I continue to improve and continuously just try to get better. So it's one of the reasons I think anyone, no matter what martial arts, people should train martial arts in general. If it's
yeah.
jujitsu, if it's taekwondo, etc. But now I'm kind of curious that, we talk about the good things. I want to talk about failure and failures turning into opportunities. A lot of people say that one major thing when it comes to executives, no one ever talks about their failures. What's some of the failures that turned into opportunities for you to help you get better through your career? It could be through military, et cetera. What were those times where this was a big failure, but it actually helped you improve?
One of the it's an interesting question, and I mean, there are no shortage of failures that I could point to, like massive tactical errors, judgment errors. I mean, things that, I needed to just dust myself off and get back on my feet type things. To tie this a little bit more into leadership and career development, I think about where I see people struggle to make the leap. I guess the leap into that next level, right? And one of those attritters or hurdles that's difficult to get over is the ability to let go. And so, like, for example, and this is probably a silly example, and like, I mean, I'm going to misuse nomenclature and vocabulary, but like to be a chief technical officer, right, or a CIO, you're not working the help desk anymore, even though that might be something that you're really good at. Or Amir, you're a software engineer, like you're not writing code anymore, right? You're leading people that are, meant to multiply through you. And I remember having to learn that lesson the hard way. And so, like, we talked a little bit about my background. I wasn't always a CFO. I came up on the finance side, and the particular brand of finance that I had was more financial planning and analysis. And so that could be anything from budgeting, forecasting, deep financial analysis, profitability analysis, like you name it. Like there was all those types of flavors. That's a lot different than things like corporate accounting, financial reporting, corporate tax, internal controls. All of those are functions under the CFO's mandate. When I was in charge of finance, I could do anything I wanted. And if something went sideways, all that meant to me was I might miss dinner. I might have to sleep here tonight. This might cost me my weekend, but I can get it done. Me. When I took on a broader functional level role, or it moved away from the functional level role into something that was more enterprise level, all of a sudden, like I couldn't rely on those strengths. I couldn't rely on heroism anymore. And I had to fail a couple times before I got through that. Now I might have an associate's degree in it. At the time I was in third grade. I'm constantly trying to pressure test that for myself. Like if I'm doing something that I can delegate, I'm probably wrong, you know, and it might be the right thing to do in the moment, but it's not the right organizational design, and it's not right for the people that are around me. I'm robbing other leaders of the opportunity to take that. I'm robbing other functional members of the team from the opportunity to develop those skills selfishly because it feels good to me. I'm moving a piece of paper from one side of my desk to the other. Like that's what it's kind of attributed to. And so, um, man, that took a lot of bumps and bruises to get over because, it's one of those simple, not easy things. And so, like, that would be one of the things that I would encourage any up and coming leader to really do an audit of. And sometimes it's hard, like when you're in an organization for a long time, like it's easy to reinvent yourself when you go to a place where nobody knows you. Cause now all of a sudden, like you've learned these lessons, you come into a place and like you could be a different type of person. It's hard to redefine yourself sometimes internally, but it's necessary if you want to make the leap. It really is. Otherwise, you're just going to be a hero. And, uh, and that's different. Sometimes that's necessary, but that's different.
Yeah, you hit on a key point, and I've said this before, the power of letting go. I think that that is truly what changes you into a leader, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. When you say,
It
"Hey,
does, yeah.
I'm gonna give this and start creating other leaders and have them be empowered in order to succeed as well, and not just it's gonna be all on me." You can't have a what's the word I'm thinking? You can't have a superhero complex like you
Yeah,
said earlier. You can't be Superman all the time. Somebody has
yeah.
to be Batman and Robin and
That's right.
everybody else in there in order for us to still succeed. So
That's right.
it definitely does make sense. Now I'm kind of curious in a little bit on the tech side, since me and Amir are as far as technical, but you're a CFO and technology now is now starting to affect you as well, especially when we come to AI. How is that changing you as a CFO in the realm of technology and AI is being so prominent now?
Well, first of all, I don't think I have seen anything as transformational in my entire career as what I've seen happen via AI in the last 12 to 18 months. Like to see it take shape, to see it change haters and doubters, in real time, like to go from fad to required. Like I don't think I could put my finger on anything that even comes close. Um, if I think about AI right now, I mean, for my business, like we are effectively like an information processing business. I mean, if you think about it, we have a variety we're financiers for aircraft, we're owners of aircraft. Our customers are airlines throughout the entire world that are operating these complicated machines. And so for us, the ability to compile, process, synthesize data, um, that's the first horizon that we're up against. What it looks like in 10 years, I mean, I imagine it, the same impact on finance that things like integrating spreadsheets and the internet and whatnot have. I can't even imagine what it would be. But I don't subscribe to this world now where AI is going to come in and it's going to gut an element of our workforce. I think it will enhance the value of judgment, not eliminate it. And that's what I try to remind the people that are around me. And so, but like I said, I mean, this is something that I've never seen in my career. Something that has had such an impact and has transformed, uh, the way we do business, like AI has.
I'm gonna agree with that. I think now, it's like you say in the last 12 months. That's pretty
Yeah,
fast.
I know.
Of
Yeah,
anything that is transformed, usually it would take a lot longer. Now we're getting into the cost implication of AI now. Everybody's talking about token use, etc. It's the
yeah,
same thing when we went to the cloud. Everybody's like, yeah, put everything in the cloud. And then all of a sudden everybody started getting bills. And it was like, oh, okay, now I need to understand it a lot more. So it is changing. And I think that's a good aspect from your end because I feel like no matter if you're CFO, CEO, etc., you have to understand where the technology is going in order to improve the business for the most
totally.
part.
Yeah,
Amir,
totally agree.
what's your take on it, Amir?
Well, I couldn't agree more with Dave. I've seen technologies change. This has been the most transformational technology I've ever seen in my career as well. But I'm reminded of Wayne Gretzky, skate to where the puck is going,
Mm.
not where the
Ooh,
puck
that's a
is.
good analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
Really good.
So from a technologist perspective, my own specifically, I don't really think we've seen where this thing is going to land. And I love the analogy you use, first horizon, because there's a second, third, and more. From an AI perspective, I think we'll see workforce transformation be more significant and frequent. because you'll have to upskill. And I think to your point about augmentation, we'll see more of that. I see automation, augmentation, and assistive technologies being
Yeah.
brought more and more. Augmentation is what we're seeing right now through generative AI. We're going to see more and more automation happen. Financial services industry, which is where I've been for a long time, has seen the use of machine learning neural nets in the past for fraud detection, but we're going to see more and more of that happen in different ways. But I'm curious to know from your perspective as a financial professional, what does it mean for the young people who are coming up the ranks? Because they're graduating right now and they're being told you need to use AI. And if it's not part of your repertoire, you're in trouble. How do you
Yeah.
see that as a leader as you grow your staff from the ground up?
Well, I mean, I go back to those mindset pillars that we had talked about as well, adaptability being one of them. And it isn't just young people. I mean, it's people like me as well. For $500, you can get a master class on some of the basics of this stuff, as opposed to sticking your head in the sand and waiting for, something to come out in a PDF or something,
Yeah.
for you to read. Like, and so that's a piece of it, right? And then, man, it wasn't that long ago where people in like entry level finance would literally open an envelope up, take a piece of paper out of it and write into a system what it said. And so like if you're expecting to go back to that world in any way, shape, or form, then you're going to be massively disappointed. And so and then you could take it up a notch too into things that are a little bit more advanced, like if you were doing financial statement analysis or reviews or automating some of the basic accounting functions or whatnot. Like if you can't fast forward to that zone, you're probably going to get left behind to a certain degree. And so like how that ends, how that flows through, like once again, the processing of data, the synthesizing of data, all that does to me right now is it enhances the value of judgment. It doesn't eliminate the need for it. And so like to use your analogy of skate to where the puck is going, I mean, that's where the puck is going. It's going to be a focus on what you can judge, right? Um, so but there's no question. I mean, like my son is a young up and comer in accounting right now, and so that's something that he's having to deal with as well. Like, are there elements of the roles that he's in which are just going to simply be sort of bypass? You know, and I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Yep. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Renard, I think it's time we start shifting into the lightning round. What do you say?
Hey, let's do it. Let's do it.
So Dave, we do this thing with our guests towards the end where we say, we're going to ask you a question and short answers, like whatever comes to your
Okay.
mind, right?
Okay. All right.
Renard, you want to kick us off, sir?
Yeah, and of course, since we have someone who is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I have to ask, gi or no gi?
Gi, because it's more realistic. Nobody walks around naked. I mean, you grab clothes in real life. I've never understood this, like, the sport element. I love no gi. But in terms of practical usage, gi all day.
I like it. All right. So aviation finance or BJJ, which one has actually taught you more about staying calm when you're out of position?
Aviation. That this industry will ride you hard and it'll hang you up wet. There's no question. And the benefits aren't always as apparent as they are in BJJ. BJJ, the lesson is immediate. It's tactile, and you could apply your learnings immediately. And sometimes it takes a long time in finance and in probably other careers as well. So the long game has definitely been developed through finance.
Okay. Well, if what's one lesson that you've taken, let's say either from the military, the aviation port, or jujitsu, that is one key thing that you take in leadership?
Hustle creates luck. And not just hustle creates luck, but those types of things often have the reciprocal to it as well. Meaning, if you don't hustle, you will probably find yourself unlucky. And so I learned that early on. I don't remember if it was in the Marine Corps or after that, but it's been a mantra of mine for the last 20 years. And I always like sometimes you just got to hustle. It's okay. Miss a dinner, miss a night's sleep. Sometimes you just got to hustle and luck will find you.
That is such a quotable quote. All right, so I'm gonna follow up from my question earlier. What is the most underrated quality in a great BJJ coach? And same thing for the CFO. Is it same or different qualities?
What I have benefited from the most in my coach is his humanity and the relationship. Um, he gave me my brown belt, my black belt. He's a mentor, a friend, a person that man, just etched on my life's stone, and so those same attributes are there with work as well. The higher up you go, and probably at the lower levels too. I mean, relationships are something you have to cultivate and build, and so trying to take the transactional side out of this and add in a little bit of more humanity and leading with that, as a leader, that's I think that's important.
Love it. Lead with humanity. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna add on that real briefly. He is telling the truth. When it comes to your coach, if you got a good coach, he
Mhm.
becomes more than just your coach. He becomes a great friend, a mentor, etc. I feel the same way about my coach. It's one of the reasons I even stay at that gym is because of him. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna have to add on that. And my last question from me, if you could go all the way back to, let's say, probably right out of the military, what would your other job be outside of now that you're the CFO, you went into finance? What else would you have done if it wasn't finance?
Man, I was all over the place back then. I mean, that version of Dave Crull, thank God he got tamed. And I mean, like when I go back and look at some of the things that I did and the ways that I thought, my goodness, I don't know that the world could handle another alternate universe of that version of me. Um, but I would have done something with my hands. I loved being a mechanic. I thought it was awesome. I felt like it was useful. And like I said, like I felt like, um, uh, I thought it was a meritocracy, and so that was a lesson that I learned the hard way. But it wasn't. I didn't leave it because I didn't like it. So I could see an alternate version of a Dave in coveralls and turban grease all over him and smelling like fuel. And that's probably out there somewhere in some universe.
All right, I'm gonna ask my last question, Dave. If there's one thing the mat has taught you in one sentence that no boardroom has ever taught you, what would it be?
Well, a lot of parallels to the boardroom in this, but complacency kills. It takes a split second and a very small error to have the round go completely the other way for you and against you. And the mat has taught me that. And I've honed it, and sometimes like you don't even realize it, but those little margins, that's the difference between a black belt and a purple belt, is those margins start to become a lot smaller. It's harder to exploit them. And so um, we look for them. We look for them in the boardroom too, as you know, but complacency kills.
Dave, that is a great way to end this wonderful conversation. I can't thank you enough. I've walked away with a lot of nuggets, just
Me too. I
personally
had a
speaking.
blast, man. This is fun. A lot of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
A lot of fun. And let me just say, like, once again, like we kicked off, I mean, you guys are reaching a whole different crew than a lot of the jujitsu focused podcasts are. And so I thank you guys for bringing this to the community out there in LinkedIn, everything that's going on in vertical motion and all the exposure that people are getting to this type of stuff through that community, but also the thousands of followers and the live events that you guys are doing and stuff. I mean, it's really been fun to watch that evolved. And like I said at the beginning, I'm really honored to be a part of it. And I thank you guys for inviting me on and having me as a guest.
Well,
Thank you for joining us.
absolutely. And with that, I'm going to say to our Black Belts and Boardrooms listeners, if you found value in today's conversation, here's what we ask. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It takes about 30 seconds at most. And by doing this, you'll help other leaders find the show. On YouTube, hit like and subscribe. And if someone in your life needs to hear this, send it to them. That's how we grow. And with this one, Renard, any closing thoughts?
Man, I remember I wish we can go back to prices in the '90s.
Mm,
When stuff was a lot cheaper, gas was a dollar something. You could go
Yeah, had a
to
one handle.
yeah, you can go to fast food restaurant with $5 and get change back. I do miss those days.
Yeah, me too.
The other thing I will say when it comes to the mats actually teaches you to be humble and be grateful because every time you get a chance to step on those mats, be grateful to be on those mats. Same thing when it comes to leadership. Be humble and be grateful in everything that you do. Same parallels. I will tell anybody, and I know Dave could speak to this. You step on those mats, it's a humbling and it's a grateful experience to continue to get a chance to do that on a regular basis. So that's my take for the end.
Love it. Love it.
Beautiful. And with that, dear listeners, we will see you in the next one.